the top honor for an early career researcher in positive psychology from the International Positive Psychology Association. And it was such a great pleasure to see her honored and being recognized as the up and coming researcher that year. And I thought it would be a few years before she saw anything like that again. And the very next year, the Templeton Foundation honored her with one of the largest research awards we've seen in a long time, which is 1.7 million US dollars to study love across the world in a whole number of countries. And you'll see tonight, she's so passionate about her work, about happiness, about positive psychology. And sure hope you've had a lot of coffee because I know this is not your favorite time of day. But thank you so much for being here with us. And let's give her a warm welcome. Thank you, Professor Hashmati. It's all yours.
Thank you so much for that, just humbling introduction. Stuart always, gives great introductions, which brings up the expectations. So I'll try to make sure that I do meet that expectation. But it's such a pleasure being here with you all, especially with an international audience, where I'm truly passionate about just kind of taking the perspective of culture and context in the study of different phenomenon in positive psychology. And I think kind of talking with you all, and I hope that my talk will kind of lead to us all talking together around the concepts of positive emotions and love that I'll be introducing today, so that I can also learn from you, and I can also kind of take your perspectives and really understand these phenomena from different cultural lenses that you all afford. So I'll start sharing my screen so that I can start my slides. All right. Hopefully you can all see the slide. Yes. Okay. Yes. Fantastic. All righty. Okay, so today I'm here to talk to you about the power of positive emotions and love. I'm a researcher and a psychologist fascinated by how our emotional lives shape how we grow and connect. So much of my work and my curiosity centers around this question of what is it that connects us? And one answer that keeps on emerging across studies, across disciplines, and across cultures is emotion. But not just any emotion, positive emotions specifically. And I'm here to talk to you about the power of positive emotions and one particular supreme emotion, that's love. Okay, I'm trying to navigate your beautiful faces on my screen. All right, there we go. Okay. So picture this, and feel free to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. You're walking outside, not thinking of much, when suddenly you catch a glimpse of the sky. Bright orange with lavender streaks, and the sun is setting. You stop, you feel your chest expand, you're awestruck. And for that moment, nothing else matters. That's not just a pretty sunset, that's a shift in your physiology. That's a shift in your perspective and a shift in your potential. That is positive emotion at work. So if you've closed your eyes, please come back and open your eyes again. So today, in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so, I'll take you through a journey of exploring positive emotions. I will present what we know about the science of positive emotions, And then I will talk about why they matter for our well-being and how we can intentionally cultivate them to build lives and communities and systems that help us truly flourish and be happy. So, what are emotions? Think of emotions as these internal compasses. They quickly orient you toward what matters the most. Emotions are multi component responses to the stimuli around us. They are brief in duration. They are triggered by relevance to the goals that we have, to our identity, as well as our values and culture. They're also adaptive. They help you respond to the opportunities as well as the threats that come at you in your life. Let's take a moment to understand what makes emotions and why they are so powerful in shaping our behavior and connection with others. There are four core components that researchers generally agree that define an emotional experience. First, there is the subjective experience, basically how it feels inside. Then we have a physiological response, like changes in your heart rate or arousal. Third, we have a cognitive appraisal. So, how we actually interpret what's happening in front of us. And finally, the action tendencies, what the emotion motivates us to do in action. So, each emotion engages both our mind and body and prepares us to respond to stimuli. Emotions have fascinated psychologists for decades, and there's still a debate. Are emotions in our genes? Are they in our thoughts? Or are they a matter of our culture? So we have multiple theories out there around emotions. One of them is Ekman's basic emotion theory. So Ekman proposes that some emotions are universal and biologically hardwired. These emotions include happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise. They are expressed and recognized across all human cultures, even in people who've never been exposed to modern media. So basically, they're a way that for our survival, and these emotions have evolved to serve important survival matters and functions. For example, fear helps us avoid danger, or disgust keeps us from eating spoiled food. So that's kind of the premise of the basic emotion theory. Next, we have the cognitive appraisal theory by Lazarus. Lazarus says emotions come from how we evaluate situations. It's our interpretation, whether something is good, bad, or threatening, that actually drives how we feel. And third, we have the constructed emotion theory by Barrett. Barrett argues that emotions aren't hardwired. They're actually built by our brain using past experiences, context, and culture. So the same body signal that can lead to one emotion can be experienced differently for another person depending on how they interpret it and based on their context and their culture. So together, these three theories, and these are samples of the many other theories that are out there, but these are three kind of major theories that are kind of talked about in the science of emotions. These three theories give us a rich understanding of what emotions are, from biological signals to these socially constructed categories based on our appraisal. So they also help us appreciate why people can feel very differently in the same situation. It's a combination of our biology, our learning of situations, as well as our interpretation of context that we're in. Now that we've explored how different theories explain what emotions are and how they work, I want to shift our focus to a category of emotions that's often overlooked in psychological science, and that's positive emotions. They're not just the feel-good cousins of fear or anger. They have their own functionality beyond survival, but their functionality is more so about expansion. And what makes them especially interesting is that they often show up very quietly with low urgency, and they accumulate over time and emerge in moments of connection, achievement, or even wonder. When we say positive emotions, we're not just talking about happiness. We're talking about a whole ecosystem of uplifting experiences, each with its own shape, story, and impact. Some examples of these discrete positive emotions are joy, like playful engagement, gratitude, like recognizing something good that's someone's kind of done for you, interest, curiosity, and engagement with novelty, awe, feeling, small in the presence of something vast, love, that shared positive connection, and pride, accomplishment linked to your identity. So positive emotions are very diverse, and they vary in terms of the amount of arousal we experience, their functionality, and the way that they are expressed. For example, we have high arousal emotions like excitement, that's a positive emotion. We also have low arousal positive emotions like contentment, which, is much more calm. So you might ask why positive emotions even matter. Positive emotions might seem small or fleeting, but they are not insignificant. So today, I want you to consider this. What if our greatest resource for resilience, growth, and social connection isn't more productivity or more control, but it's actually more joy, love, gratitude, curiosity, and hope? Positive emotions may not scream for our attention, but they quietly sustain our well-being, our relationships, and our growth. Most classic theories were focused on negative emotions back in the day because they're evolutionarily tied to survival. But positive emotions, they're not just the absence of negative emotions, they are functionally distinct, and they're actually evolutionarily important in their own right. And I'll tell you why. Broaden and build theory, which you see kind of the portrayal of this theory in this image here, provides a good framework for us to understand the functionality of positive emotions. So this theory is built on two premises. One is that positive emotions broaden our momentary awareness. They increase creativity, openness, playfulness, and exploration. On the second hand, um, they're also they build enduring personal resources over time. So they build social connections, cognitive skills, even physical health and psychological resilience. So they basically work in the background. They help us kind of accumulate these skills, broaden our perspective, and build resources that we need in times of need, when we actually kind of need to deal with something very kind of emergent and urgent.
यहाँ
So
लगवा दो यहाँ लगवा दो सारे में अच्छा
did someone forget to mute? Okay. So basically, positive emotions lead to an upward spiral of well-being. As you see kind of in the image, there is kind of an upward spiral to this whole theory. So basically, we're saying that with the more broadening of the perspective, we build more resources, then we experience more positive emotion, which that then leads to even more growth. So it's kind of an upward spiral from there. So let's look at what the science tells us about why positive emotions matter, not just in the moment, but for our long-term well-being. First of all, Fredrickson and Joyner found that experiencing more positive emotions over time actually predicts greater resilience and higher life satisfaction. Next, we see that positive emotions also help our bodies. Togati and Fredrickson found that positive emotions buffer the effects of stress and promote faster physiological recovery, like lowering our heart rate and blood pressure after a stressful event. Finally, Kahn and colleagues showed that positive emotions are tied to mindfulness, also a stronger sense of purpose, and feeling more socially connected. So these are deep, meaningful resources that support our mental health and also overall flourishing and happiness. So across these studies, positive emotions don't just feel good, they actually broaden our thinking, they build lasting resources, and they help us grow psychologically, socially, and even physically. And this is the core idea behind the broaden and build theory of positive emotions that we just learned about. So if positive emotions broaden and build, then think about what happens when they're shared. That's when we enter the domain of love as a supreme emotion. Love, as we're defining it here, isn't just romance or commitment that we might think of. It's actually a state of shared emotional presence, a synchrony that arises when two people connect through these warmth as well as care and shared positivity. So these moments may be small and fleeting, but they're incredibly powerful in shaping our overall well-being. When we talk about love, we often treat it as a steady state. You're basically either in love or you're out of love. That's how we typically talk about it. But the reality is that love is more complex. Love actually fluctuates across days, across hours, and across even moments. So in short, love is dynamic. It goes up and down in response to our interactions, thoughts, and even context that we're in. Different people show different patterns of these love dynamics. We can describe these dynamics in terms of three key features. First of all, baseline, which is how loved someone typically feels, so a general sense of their feelings of love across time. We can also look at it in terms of variability, how much their feelings of love go up and down. And then we can also think about the dynamics of love in terms of inertia. How quickly or slowly their feelings return to baseline after a big shift. So once you're out of love or not feeling loved, how long does it take for you to kind of feel loved again? These differences aren't random. They tell us something meaningful about well-being. For example, someone with very low baseline, so very low averages of feeling loved, and high variability, so a lot of ups and downs in their feelings of love, might be more emotionally vulnerable or isolated. Our research shows this very clearly. So if you look at this plot on this right-hand side of the slide, you see data points from 10 individuals from one of our studies. And no, these are not measures of people's pulses. Each colored line actually represents one person's feelings of love measured multiple times over days. So these are momentary assessments of people's feelings of love over a couple of days, over moments. So 6 times a day across 2 weeks. So here you can see that some people have stable patterns, others have spikes and dips, and some of those spikes and dips are frequent, some of them are infrequent, and some of them show long stretches without any change. So all of these dynamics and all of these patterns can be quantified and actually tell us meaningful differences around which way of experiencing and feeling love is actually much more beneficial for our overall well-being. How do we do this? We conduct ecological momentary assessments or experience sampling studies to capture these ratings from people over moments, over days, and over weeks through their smartphones and health monitors. So at random times during the day, we kind of send these messages to people on their smartphones and just randomly ask them how they're feeling and how much love they feel. And based on kind of those assessments, then we can capture these patterns of how people experience feelings of love.
बता देना भी हमें कुछ सुन नहीं रहा है.
This also allows us to kind of assess this in an ecologically valid manner, meaning that we don't bring people into the lab and we don't really kind of manipulate their context or their level of comfort and then ask them how they're feeling. We actually kind of assess these as people are going about their day in their normal routines and in their kind of own comfort and their own home or own environment. And that's kind of that makes these types of assessments much more valid in terms of their ecological biases. So in one of our studies in which we asked people to report how loved they feel across time, we found that felt love increased slightly across the study period. So we had a baseline drift. So which kind of suggests that self-monitoring, right? That kind of repeatedly being asked about like how much love do you feel right now may actually act as a passive intervention. So we didn't intend for an intervention. We just wanted to assess people's feelings of love. But interestingly, just with the assessment, people's feelings of love increased over the course of the study. More interestingly, we found that higher average levels of felt love was strongly linked to greater levels of flourishing and happiness, greater levels of emotional well-being, as well as higher levels of felt gratitude. So as you see in this kind of plot here, these are plots of 3 or 4 different participants reporting on their feelings of love. And basically it shows kind of the different variations of how people experience this supreme emotion in their day-to-day life across moments. And even with this variability, we're finding that higher average levels, higher baseline levels of felt love is strongly linked to higher levels of well-being. We were also interested in understanding the dynamics of expressing love. So me kind of expressing my feelings of love for another versus feeling loved, right? Feeling loved by someone else. So we had people report on, first of all, how much love they felt at that moment, as well as how much love they expressed in each moment of assessment. One of the most striking findings was that we found that expressing love in daily life, across moments, not those like grand gestures, but just expressing love in your own kind of way that you would do in small ways in everyday life, actually cultivates felt love. So basically, if I express love to other people, it actually kind of leads to me feeling loved as well, not only the other person. So this is not immediate. It's kind of gradual, but it peaks, the effect peaks around 3 hours later. So if I express love in 3 hours, my feelings of love will peak at a high just because I express love to another person or entity. So that means that when you express love, whether through words, touch, presence, or any way that kind of is meaningful to you, it doesn't just benefit the other person, it actually comes back to you. Secondly, we see that felt love tends to last. It has a slower decay. So meaning that once you feel loved, that feeling lingers longer than expressing love. And also compared to most other positive emotions. So when you feel loved, that feeling of love actually kind of lingers longer than other positive emotions. And that's what we call emotional inertia. And here's the well-being link. People whose felt love lasted longer, who had greater inertia, also reported greater flourishing. So it's just sustaining that feeling of love over time and trying to kind of keep it and kind of immerse in it is actually leading to higher levels of flourishing and happiness for people. We also conducted a study examining how the experiences of feeling loved in daily life relates to sleep quality, which is a key indicator of emotional and physiological health. First, what we found is that people who reported higher variability in daily levels of felt love tended to report better sleep quality at night. So higher ups and downs in your feelings of love actually was associated with better sleep quality at night. It may seem a little bit counterintuitive, like, there's why, if there's, ups and downs, if there's turmoil, how can I sleep better at night? But it actually suggests that being emotionally engaged and responding flexibly to your surroundings and to the connections around you may actually support that restorative sleep. We also found that positive affect, other than love, was another significant predictor of better sleep. But we think part of the reason for this is that feeling loved includes experiences of positive affect. It's just shared among one person and another entity. And that reduces stress, which contributes to a greater sense of safety, which all of this then contributes to a healthy sleep. So let's tie it all back together. What is the link between love and human flourishing or happiness? People who experience love more consistently tend to flourish. They recover more quickly from emotional challenges, so higher resilience, and they report a stronger sense of meaning and social belonging. So in fact, these momentary experiences of love may predict well-being even more reliably than certain traits like optimism or extroversion that, is so, common of what we think predicts people's well-being. And perhaps most importantly, just paying attention to these moments, savoring these moments, these loving moments, immersing yourself in the feeling of love, and being aware of those feelings of love may increase these powerful experiences. So now that we know that everyday loving moments support flourishing, the next question is, what kinds of experiences actually make people feel loved? We often think love is deeply personal, and it is, but it also follows cultural patterns. That is, people within the same society often agree on what love looks like in their daily life. And our research explores this shared understanding by asking, are there specific moments that most people in a culture recognize as loving? We adopt an approach called cultural consensus theory, or CCT, and CCT gives us a way to study shared cultural beliefs empirically and not just conceptually. So CCT assumes that knowledge is distributed across individuals and that people collectively hold a shared cultural schema. The model actually helps us ask questions like, do people agree on what love looks like? If so, what does that shared schemata consist of? and how confident is each person in their alignment with that model. This is particularly suitable to study love across cultures. So we started this research in the United States and the general population of the US as a culture. We asked people how much they agreed or disagreed on various daily scenarios that had the potential of making people feel loved. So instead of us kind of going into a culture and telling them what we as scientists, based on our theoretical perspectives, think is loving and what we think is not loving, we go to the culture, we go to the people, and we kind of ask them to see if they all have a shared belief, a cognitive schemata that represents their understanding of what is loving and what is not loving. So here you're seeing the results from the US sample. This is a representative sample of the United States. And what we found was a clear cultural consensus around which kinds of experiences are agreed upon as loving and which ones are not. So if you look at this green box, you'll see that we found supportive and compassionate behaviors, things like someone showing care during hard times, or a child snuggling up to them, or even a pet being excited to see them when they get home, were overwhelmingly endorsed and agreed as signals of felt love among American people. On the other hand, in the red box, you'll see some controlling or possessive behaviors. So these types of behaviors, even when framed as protective, they were highly agreed upon as non-loving for the population in the United States. So these items include someone insisting on knowing where they are at all times or telling them what is best for them. So what this tells us is that in the US, love is closely tied to emotional presence, warmth, and autonomy. People want to feel seen and supported, but on the other hand, they don't like to be managed or controlled. It's also important to note that these moments are often mundane, everyday life interactions, and they're not those big, dramatic, romantic gestures that you might expect or that we kind of represent as gestures of love, for example, in days like Valentine's Day. Things like checking in, being there when someone's struggling, these are kind of what reliably communicate love to most people in this cultural context. So we then looked at responses from immigrants in the United States, and what we found was interesting because overall, immigrants and the general U.S. population showed a lot of similarities, and especially around kind of themes like care, compassion, and connection. But some differences also emerged. So if you look at this box at the bottom, the item someone insists on spending all their time with you, which was agreed upon as non-loving by the US population, was now agreed upon as loving by immigrants in the US, which may reflect cultural differences in how these types of behaviors are interpreted. While these types of actions are viewed as controlling in the West, and specifically in the US dominant culture, with many non-Western cultures, closeness and togetherness, even if it's insistence on too much of it, is viewed as signs of devotion and care. We also saw a reversal with the scenario, they hear or sing their country's national anthem. The general US population agreed that it was loving, which might be perhaps tied to pride or belonging, but immigrants actually did not see it as loving. This could reflect kind of those experiences of cultural transition, that loss of identity or disconnection from the patriotic symbols. So building on our foundational work, we have recently launched a large-scale cross-cultural study to deepen our understanding of how love is conceptualized, felt, and expressed across the world, which the John Templeton Foundation has graciously funded. This is a 5-year project spanning 6 countries, Spain, Brazil, Japan, India, Saudi Arabia, and Kenya, which were chosen to reflect the distinct cultural, linguistic, religious, and relational traditions that they represent. Our aim is to examine both the universal models of love as well as the unique local and cultural expressions of love using the CCT technique that we've adopted in other studies. All right, so far we've explored the science of positive emotions and how they broaden and build and culminate in powerful moments like love. But now in this final section, I want to show how everything we've talked about comes together to form flourishing and happy communities. Emotions don't just belong to individuals. We're all clear about that. They're social signals. And the ones that we share, like joy and gratitude, are the building blocks of human connection. In other words, connection is that context or soil in which positive emotions grow and expand. And communities can be built through that shared joy, gratitude, and compassion and storytelling among people. In fact, research has shown that positive emotions, when experienced in connection with others, are more frequent, they're more intense, and they're more enduring. So sharing positive emotions with others is kind of the key for a boost in your flourishing. Connections don't just happen automatically. We can intentionally cultivate them. There are concrete research-backed practices that help us strengthen emotional connection in our relationships, in our classrooms, workplaces, or even communities. One of these is called capitalization, the practice of responding with real enthusiasm when someone actually shares some good news with you. We've talked about being there with people in hard times, but it's also important to be there for people when they share good news with you. So it sounds very simple, but how we actually react to others' sense of joy either deepens those connections or quietly shuts them down. We also know that rituals of appreciation, things like structured gratitude, sharing what went well with someone else, or just daily check-ins can anchor relationships in shared positive emotions. And these rituals kind of help make love and recognition visible among people. And at the foundation of all of this is emotional safety. Researchers have shown that people can't be vulnerable or expressive unless they feel safe, both psychologically and emotionally. So that means creating environments where feelings are welcomed, they're not judged, and where it's safe to show up as your full self is really important. So if we want well-being that lasts, we need to start it in our communities. Research has demonstrated that communities with higher levels of social connectedness report greater well-being and lower psychological distress. We've also found that shared positive emotion brings about cohesion, purpose, and resilience, specifically in groups. And relationships that are shaped by emotional connection and support, they're good for recovery from trauma and also buffer against adverse challenges. Okay, so I want to make this more interactive at this point. So I've kind of created this word cloud activity. So if you can scan this QR code or use this link to join, there's a prompt that asks you, in your culture or daily life, what are the small everyday moments when people most often feel loved? So you have limitations in terms of how many words you can enter per prompt. So make it few short words or a few short phrases and just kind of tell us what you think that makes people feel loved in your culture and in your kind of communities. Some examples can be a hug, making tea, being remembered, sitting together. It could be as simple as that. So I'll share the cloud, but you start entering your responses. let me see. Let me. Okay. There we go. It's filling. I love what I'm seeing so far. There's what I'm reading is around, there's a lot of kind of eating together, sharing meals, cooking food for each other, having coffee. So there's kind of that theme of meal sharing that I see kind of popping up here. I also see hugs, giving hugs in different shapes or forms, kind of arising in this. That is also kind of like a very universal way of showing love and care to other people. I also see sharing time as another theme. Um, so just kind of, that concept of presence and just being there with someone and dedicating some of your time is actually very precious and very kind of appreciated, and it makes people feel loved. This is great. All right. I'm going to stop this for a second and thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And I'm going to keep this, and I might actually, if you want to continue contributing, please do, because this is going to be live. And I can kind of share this later with you all as it kind of fills up. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to now kind of have us have a little bit of a discussion around these kind of rich contributions that you all had. Um, so would anyone like to share kind of the story behind a word or phrase that they submitted? Or maybe kind of there's a cultural or family tradition around showing love in your community, in your context that you'd like to share with the group. Let me share something from my end, and maybe that'll help kind of people going. So I'm originally from Iran. And in the Persian culture where I grew up, when I was growing up, I remember that my grandmother had a little song that she made up just for me. she basically came up with the song on her own. And every time that she heard my footsteps, when I was kind of taking the stairs leading to her house, she would start singing that out loud as I was going up. So she wasn't seeing me. She was just hearing kind of, the sound of my footsteps, and she would start singing that song, which was around like, oh, Seda is coming and she's going to bring me joy and this and that. And so it was very simple and playful. And at the time, maybe I might have not appreciated it as maybe an 8-year-old, but it was so strong that it stuck in my head, and it kind of really kind of resembled her love and her presence for me. So that song really told me without question that I was seen, I was welcomed, and I was cherished. And, in our culture, maybe people don't explicitly say, I love you. Maybe, I've never heard the words, I love you from my grandparents, but I have experienced these kind of these moments of presence, these small gestures that kind of signaled attentiveness and the love that she had for me. So I'm very curious to kind of hear from you all in terms of what might be some small rituals or gestures or personalized traditions that you all kind of use to kind of share these moments of positivity resonance. So I'll stop here, and I'm eager to hear from you.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, Saida. It was wonderful. Yeah, it was an amazing session. I really enjoyed a lot and got to know how this small gesture of love can fill the life with positivity and happiness. I would like to share a small thing with you. There are multiple things which I have not even thought of ever before. Today, when I was listening to you, I realized the small things which are actually making me happy and feeling loved. When I was typing, I was having so many things in my mind: what to write, what not to write, what to left. It was really an amazing thing to just recall all the memories and happiness around me. So I just want to share a small thing, like two things I'm sharing. First is when my daughter loves me, when my daughter kisses me, hugs me, it gives me a feeling of true love and happiness. And second is when my former principal, acknowledged me in public for the work I have done for the institution and the things I have, marked for the success in the NAC assessment. It was really have given me a feeling of proud, as well as I was wondering to I was thinking of doing so many things for my institution with the double energy and positivity. So these two things I would like to share with you, and thank you so much for giving this wonderful session with sharing this session with us. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you so much, because you just made me feel loved with all of those beautiful words that you said. We just kind of shared a positivity resonance moment right there. And I don't even know you, but I felt it. So thank you for your kindness. And I love what you brought up, because a lot of the themes that you brought up are very universal, because we're also seeing that, a child coming up to a person and hugging and kind of appreciating and spending time with, their parents or their caregivers is one of those very highly rated scenarios that people agree upon as loving. So this kind of, this parenthood and child-parent relationship and the realness of it, the genuineness of it is real, and people feel it and people acknowledge it as loving. So that's great. And also the acknowledgement of achievements. It's been interesting that we've just started our kind of cross-cultural assessment, and we found that as a theme that came up in Spain as well. So Spain was the first country that we went to kind of study this. We're going to other countries, so we're very kind of excited to see how this kind of, replicates, or we see the unique patterns accomplishments in other countries, but that acknowledgement of people, their accomplishments, is very much a theme also that comes up. That sense of pride, right, that other people feel for you, provides that feeling of happiness to other people. So thank you for sharing that. I want to kind of make sure that we hear from other people as well. Anyone else who wants to share?
Yes, please. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, rather, I have many questions to you, but on love, let me just tell you that actually I practice love, and I always wonder how can you enhance love in everyone? So my practice is very simple that whoever I see, I do not judge them. I look at them and send my love to everyone. That's how I practice myself. But I don't know how can we help others to love themselves and to love others and to be, in that frame of love, so-called. Because if love is the highest emotion, I disagree with Kohn et al. 2009 on the how to get positive, how to do we get the positive emotions. He talks about if you are emotionally positive, your mindfulness rises. I believe very strongly as a practitioner of mindfulness that if we are mindful, we are able to create positive emotions. So that's something that I would disagree with him. I don't know, it must be some, because otherwise, how do you get to the positive emotions? What are the ways to get into positive emotions? Can there be an epigenic changes that can help us reconstruct our emotions? So what are the ways? We have learned that good emotions are very good for our flourishing and everything. But how do you raise those good emotions? Is the question that I had actually. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening and for your great questions. There's a lot to unpack there, but I can tell you that first of all, there's a lot of cultural differences that in a lot of these kind of studies that we look at, they're not kind of considered or acknowledged, right? So a lot of these research has been done in Western countries, and these concepts of kind of internal maybe self-love or sources of love that can come from internal reflections may not be as dominant in Western cultures as they are in Eastern cultures. And I think like those types of lack of cultural lenses that we have in our research is what is kind of bringing those limitations into our findings. But and what we see in the more Western kind of research on love is more of getting these types of feelings from external sources, right? Kind of again this sense of capitalization is basically you kind of being acknowledged or you being able to share your positive emotions, your accomplishments with someone else, and another person reciprocating that feeling with you, right? So there's a lot of kind of aspects that can contribute to someone experiencing positive emotions that can be both, again, internal or external, but it depends on what the researcher kind of uses to study that. I hope I answered your question, but we can definitely kind of catch up later to unpack this further.
Thank you. Gratitude.
Of course. Thank you.
I think Sherry had a question. Go ahead, Sherry.
I just wanted to tell you that I thought a lot about this when you were talking, and how when my children come, they expect me when they leave to kiss them on the forehead. And I never thought about it that that's a ritual for us. That's a way of me showing them that I love them. One of my daughter's friends the other day said to me, I wish that you would kiss me in the forehead. So when she was leaving, I did, and she got very excited. And I didn't realize how much that means to them.
That is beautiful.
Until tonight. Thank you.
I actually got goosebumps as you were kind of explaining that because I totally felt it. Yes, and you know what? And it's kind of also, when you say ritual, I love that because it's also the repetition of these types of behaviors that kind of accumulate over time and that
Uh-huh.
contribute to that kind of more overarching well-being and
And
flourishing
now
and
my
health.
daughter's doing it to her daughter. So
There you go.
it just carrying on. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for sharing.
I'm in Lakshmi Ghosh Kundu, just listening to your session, and I would like to thank you that you have remembered your grandma. It also made me remembered my grandma also listening to your experience. What I can recollect, it was a ritual that she imposed on me. Every time I went for examination and used to like visit her, she used to stay with me. She offered a japa mantra, her mantra. She used to put her hands on my head for 5 minutes, and this continued for many years. So, what became as a reflex for me before going for the examination, I used to go to her and say, "Won't you do the japa on my head?" And it was a belief that came on me that if my dadi would offer japa, my examination will be good. I can secure good marks, and I have started doing it for my daughters also. They also come to me and say, "Ma, won't you offer this japa?" And that was a positive thing that your sharing memory of your grandma remembered me. Thank you so much for the session.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and it's just so lovely because at that point you might kind of think of it as this good omen, but what it's actually doing is that it's actually kind of injecting good feelings in you, right? You're sharing a positive moment of kind of care and well-being for each other, and there's kind of that shared positive emotion that's being injected in you, and you take that with you, and it's basically kind of lingering with you. Research has shown that it's long lasting, so it'll kind of last with you as you go on to your next tasks, and it helps you along the way. Just having that positive emotions helps you broaden your perspectives, helps you kind of really take in whatever is in your surrounding and appreciate it. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Zoran.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Ma'am, in one of the points, I had noticed that you mentioned about promoting how love also promotes physiological recovery. So I saw the theme where a lot of people talked about how having someone be present for you, whether be it in terms of before you go for an exam or when you start the day, like when you know that someone is there for you. I wanted to give the example because recently my uncle was admitted to the hospital, and 3 days back he was in the ICCU. So he was in a pretty alarming state. However, a lot of my family members showed up for him. We expressed our concern. We expressed that there were people there praying for him, and I felt that this really helped with his recovery because in a matter of a few days, uh, like we saw tremendous recovery as well, that he gradually got better, and even in terms of his actual physiological state, you could actually see it happen. So I feel that the presence of another individual that you are cared for, and that is really important. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. It actually reminds me of a research, and you've probably heard of it, but um, we had a researcher here in the United States that looked at how much the presence of someone else would calm your cognition as you were solving a problem that was in front of you. So they put people under a scanner, and they would kind of have the person hold the hand of either a stranger or a friend or a romantic partner that they felt really close with. and then they kind of had them solve a difficult problem, like a math problem. And so they kind of realized that when you're holding someone that you feel safe with and you feel close to, actually lowers kind of that cognitive load that was shown in the brain scans. So it physiologically impacts you when when you feel connected to someone that you feel safe with. Yes, thank you. Yeah, Renika.
Yeah, hi, ma'am. So it's a very nice session. Sharing of positivity. I'm basically from a northeastern part of India, and there's a culture of ours where in India there's mostly the menstrual cycle is taken as a impurity, but then in our culture it is a festival. So whenever there's a girl who gets the first menstrual cycle, it's a festival, and it is completely celebrated within the women's, but it is taken so positively where I think, and because I have been now traveling, and also I've taken classes of happiness, like mindfulness and happiness and social psychological happiness for the students here in the institution. So somehow I feel like these positivities, when you see, or the students see from a very younger age, they have a mindset where they feel happy and they know that, okay, there's the other side, and there are perspectives where people look into. Somehow your session has put that a plus point where, we got to know a lot of things, and I know that I can teach more of positive psychology to the students. Thank you so much.
That's amazing. It goes back to that sense of community, right? Like these kind of felt kind of positive emotions and love are only meaningful when you're with others, right? And kind of once it's actually applied to a community, it has this kind of profound and more enduring impact on you. So when you're with a group of people that you share the same rituals and you're celebrating something, or if you're with a group of students that you're educating, but you have this shared experience with, you kind of experience these types of emotions more profoundly and in a more enduring way. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we can take one last question by Professor Rupashri. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I was about to ask if we have time. Thank you. So I'll be very quick. 3 things, Saida. First of all, reading your papers and connecting you personally is really, really different. So we are really feeling loved. Love to hear you here. The second thing is, as you said, maybe it has a cultural connection. That's why I'm telling you, like some experience. So when, again, I'm not sure whether expectations have anything to do with feeling loved. For example, if you are expecting something and you are getting from somebody else, you feel more loved than not expecting and getting it. I'm not sure, maybe research, you can only tell us. But my experience, again, for example, if I have really got up early and made a very good food for my family, and my family is eating it and just acknowledging, the food is tasty, that itself makes me feel loved. But at the same time, if I don't get any response and people just come and eat and go, then probably I feel, oh my God, I spend so much time and maybe I'm not loved, right? Same thing also applies in a professional setting. When I have spent so much of time to do a lot of things which are not in my so-called job role, like maybe administrative responsibilities and all, and if my higher authorities or peers do not acknowledge it, then I feel really not loved. And if they really acknowledge that, okay, Rupa, along with the teaching and research, has contributed to something good, I feel loved. So again, I'm not sure whether it has a cultural connotation, but I just wanted to share my experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that point up, because it actually kind of touches on another aspect of the research I've done, is that we've kind of actually assessed to see if someone's kind of own beliefs about love for themselves. So let's say I have these beliefs around, these types of behaviors in daily life make me feel loved. But then the culture that I'm living in, let's say, has a different set of shared beliefs. And if these two sets of beliefs don't align, they actually contribute to lower levels of well-being on me. Right. So that's kind of one of the major reasons why we're doing this this kind of cross-cultural research, is not only we're trying to kind of align people's kind of shared beliefs with their own culture, but we're also trying to connect people from different cultures to be able to communicate love in a way that the other kind of culture also it resonates with them, right? So if I kind of come from a culture that has these certain shared beliefs around love, but I go to another culture that their shared beliefs are different, then I will not be able to connect with them in a loving way because I don't know their language, right? I don't know how they kind of experience and believe and feel loved. And so what we're trying to do is really kind of understand what is universal. So there are aspects that are universal, that every person in every culture is probably going to feel loved by maybe a simple kind of hug, right? That we're also not sure yet, because some cultures don't invite hugs. But there are also very culturally specific aspects. And culture, again, can be a whole nation. Culture can be your family, right? So culture can be any groups of people that share certain kind of schemata around a notion. So if, let's say that your kind of sets of beliefs and your behaviors, if they align with what is kind of communicated to you, then you will feel loved. If they don't align, you won't feel loved. And not only you won't feel loved, you will actually be experiencing lower levels of well-being. So what you're experiencing is actually kind of backed by research.
Thank you.
I have
one
a
last
very
thing.
short story to tell, if there is time. Back in Bhutan, a very young lady, sister of my colleague, was in the hospital. She was totally hospitalized, and she had a problem with her spine here. She couldn't speak, she couldn't move. And then I went to her because I knew her. I went to her and talked to her. The doctor said she could maybe listen, but she can't speak. So I assured her so much that she was required back to come to, to herself, because she's loved by everybody. Everybody is missing. If anything happens to you, what's going to happen to the rest of all of us and her relations, and so forth and so forth. And then I kept on doing this for a couple of days, and you'll not believe she came back to life again.
Wow.
Thank
Wow.
you.
That's very powerful. And I love that we're ending with that story, because that was very powerful.
Saida, you'll end with my little question.
Okay.
You mentioned that when you express love, then the echo comes back to you in a peak and after 3 hours. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
I love you, Saida.
Does that resonate with your own personal feelings or experiences?
Yes, I
It
guess
does.
so, but I'm going to verify it after 3 hours now.
Okay, so I'm being put to the test, huh? So take into account that that's average across people, right? So for some people it can be a little bit less, some people can be, but that's the average that we found.
Don't
And
worry,
in
Saida.
the sample that we looked at.
I'm already feeling loved.
That's great. That's amazing. Let's see how much it lingers. Time yourself.
Very grateful to Reiki sir and Saida ji for conducting such a wonderful session and giving insights on our lives, how to improve it by not only giving love and open to receive love as well. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your kindness.
Thank you, Saida, for such an engaging session. I think the people, their questions have made it quite clear that it was such a beautiful and enriching session. And we all believe that love is what makes the world go around. And we already have a demand for another session. I just saw on the chat. So hopefully we will connect again. And before we leave, I would like Dr. Subhayan to express a vote of thanks officially, please, on behalf of the foundation.
Thank you, Dr. Ria. And at the very onset, I would like to thank the Reiki Foundation and Claremont Graduate University for bringing such a wonderful session today. And regarding Dr. Saida Heshmati, I have no words, ma'am. I'm simply speechless because I believe the responses which you got from the session, it already speaks a lot. So I don't need to remind you again regarding that. What was the session? It was such a wonderful session that actually it made my day today.
Oh.
Because the thing is that actually I am also working in the domain of learning. And this critical thinking, I find it very interesting that critical thinking is also related to love, because during my study, what I find that this learning, as this is a very complex process of learning, and we are just thinking about how to develop critical thinking, and also simple love can be another factor which may increase the level of critical thinking among the learners. So maybe future the researchers may say something regarding that, but really this session was really outstanding, and I have no words. I have no I'm just flooded with my emotions, and really excellent session, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all for just being here, bearing with me as I poured out, my work and my research in the last decade. And it's been such a pleasure to be able to share that with you all and receive so much love back from you all. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope, Saida, you feel less tired now. So.
Oh, I am so energized. I can go on and on. I don't think I'll sleep tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and making this a successful session yet again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.